Ethan has never paid a bill in his life. My wife said it with a smile, raising her wine glass beneath the warm amber lights of the private dining room. And for half a second, nobody reacted because the sentence sounded too cruel to be real. Then her brother Trevor laughed. Her mother covered a grin with her napkin. Her father leaned back in his chair and studied me with the tired disappointment of a man looking at a broken appliance. Madison laughed with them. That was the part one remembered most. Not the words. Not the judgment. Her laughter. I sat beside her at the long walnut table, one hand resting near my water glass, the other flat against my thigh, while 12 years of marriage were reduced to a family joke between the salad plates and the retirement cake. We were celebrating her father Robert's final week as regional director for a construction supply company in Charlotte. He had spent 38 years measuring men by titles, salaries, and the cars parked outside. Madison knew that. She also knew exactly what her little speech would do. Trevor lifted his bourbon and looked across the table at me. "So what's the secret, man?" he asked. "How do I convince my wife to fund my whole lifestyle?" Another round of laughter moved through the room. It reached every chair except mine. I looked at Madison. She wore the expression she used at company events, polished and effortless, the kind of smile that made strangers believe she had never doubted herself a day in her life. "Don't be dramatic," she said, touching my sleeve. "They know I'm kidding." But she was not kidding. Jokes have warmth in them. This had calculation. Robert cleared his throat and cut into his steak. "A man should contribute," he said. "That's all I'll say." It was not all he wanted to say. I could see the rest sitting behind his eyes. Linda gave Madison a sympathetic look. "You've always been too generous," she told her. Madison lowered her gaze as if embarrassed by the compliment. That small performance told me more than the insult had. She had told this story before. Maybe not at this table, but somewhere. Over the phone. During lunches. In private conversations where I was not there to correct her. A story in which she carried the mortgage, paid the insurance, handled the cars, covered the vacations, and kept her quiet, unambitious husband comfortable. I felt something tighten beneath my ribs, but my voice stayed level. "That's one version of it," I said. Trevor grinned. "There's another?" Madison's fingers closed around my wrist under the table. Not hard, just enough to warn me. I glanced down at her hand, then back at the faces waiting for me to defend myself. I could have ended it there. I could have listed every payment, every transfer, every year of tuition, every loan balance, every check written before Madison's salary had enough commas to impress her family. But truth delivered in anger often sounds like an excuse. So I let the silence sit. A waiter arrived with the check inside a black leather folder and placed it near Robert. Madison reached for it immediately. "Dad, tonight is on me," she announced. Robert smiled with pride. "That's my girl." She pulled a silver credit card from her purse and set it on the folder. I recognized the last 4 digits before the waiter picked it up. The card carried Madison's name, but it was an authorized user card connected to an account I had opened 8 years earlier. Every charge flowed through Cole Property Holdings. Every statement went to my accountant. Every balance was paid from my operating account. I watched the waiter walk away with it, and for the first time that evening, I almost smiled. Madison had just called me a freeloader while using my money to pay for the room. When the waiter returned, she signed the receipt with a flourish and added a 25% tip. Her family praised her generosity. I thanked the waiter. Nobody noticed the difference. Outside, the October air had turned cool, carrying the smell of rain across the parking lot. Robert shook my hand without looking directly at me. Linda hugged Madison and whispered something that made them both glance in my direction. Trevor slapped my shoulder and said, "You've got it made, brother." I said goodnight and walked toward my 8-year-old Ford pickup. Madison followed in heels that clicked sharply against the pavement. "You could have played along," she said. "Instead, you made everything awkward." I stopped beside the driver's door. "I made it awkward." Her expression hardened for 1 second, then softened into practiced patience. "My family respects success, Ethan. They understand what I do. You sit at home with a laptop and never explain anything. What do you expect them to think?" I looked past her toward the restaurant windows, where her family still sat beneath the warm lights, finishing a meal they believed she had purchased. "I expect my wife not to lie about me," I said. She folded her arms. It was harmless. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A payment notification had arrived. Dinner, gratuity, private room fee. Total, $1,846.72. Paid from my account. I turned the screen off before Madison could see it. She walked toward her SUV, another expense she claimed as proof of her independence. I stood beside my old truck and watched her taillights disappear into traffic. Then I called Daniel Brooks, the accountant who had managed my books for 15 years. He answered on the third ring. "Ethan, everything okay?" I looked down at the dark phone screen, where the dinner charge was still waiting behind the lock screen. "Daniel," I said, "I need a complete record of every household bill I've paid since the day I married Madison." He was silent for a moment. "How complete?" I watched rain begin to spot the windshield. "Complete enough," I said, "that nobody can ever rewrite the truth again." The rain followed me all the way home, thin at first, then steady enough to blur the streetlights into pale streaks across the windshield. Madison had already arrived by the time I pulled into the driveway. Her white sport utility vehicle sat beneath the garage light, spotless, polished, and paid for from an account she never mentioned when she described herself as the only responsible adult in our marriage. I parked my truck outside and stayed behind the wheel for a moment, listening to the rain tap against the roof. The house looked calm from the street. 2 stories of brick, warm kitchen windows, trimmed hedges, the kind of place people pointed to when they talked about stability. I had bought it 3 years before I met Madison. She knew that. She had once stood barefoot in the empty living room, turned in a slow circle, and said she could not believe I had built such a life by myself. Somewhere along the way, admiration had become entitlement, and entitlement had rewritten the past. When I stepped inside, she was in the kitchen removing her earrings. Her purse sat open on the counter beside the silver card she had used at dinner. She did not look at me. "I hope you are not going to sulk all night," she said. I hung my jacket by the door. "I am not sulking. You barely spoke in the car. You drove separately." She paused, then gave a small sigh, as if even the facts were becoming inconvenient. "You know what I mean." I walked to the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and watched her reflection in the dark window above the sink. Madison was still wearing the navy dress she had chosen for dinner, the one she said made her look like someone people listened to. She was right. People listened to her. That was why the lie mattered. "Why does your family think I do not work?" I asked. Her shoulders stiffened. "Because you never talk about what you do." "That is not what I asked." She turned then, crossing her arms. "What do you want me to say, Ethan? You sit in the upstairs office. You take calls. You stare at spreadsheets. You do not have a boss. You do not go to meetings in a downtown building. To them, it looks like you manage a few investments. And to you?" Her eyes shifted toward the counter. "Just for a second. I know you handle things." Handle things. 15 years of building a company reduced to 2 vague words. I remembered the first property I bought, a boarded-up strip center outside Concord with leaking ceilings and 3 empty storefronts. The bank had called it a bad risk. I had called it a beginning. I spent 6 months negotiating leases, replacing roofs, and persuading small business owners that the neighborhood was not finished yet. That one property became 4. Became 11. By the time Madison and I married, Cole Property Holdings owned retail space, medical offices, and warehouse buildings across 3 counties. I never put my name on billboards. I never posted photographs beside ribbon cuttings. I preferred quiet contracts, steady tenants, and numbers that made sense at the end of the month. Madison used to respect that. In the early years, she would sit on the floor of my office with takeout containers between us while I reviewed repair estimates. She would ask questions about occupancy rates and financing terms. She called me patient. She called me disciplined. Later, when her career began to rise, she started calling my work flexible, then comfortable, then easy. The words changed slowly enough that I did not notice what they were becoming. "My family does not understand businesses like yours," she said. "They understand salaries, promotions, titles. So you told them you pay for everything." I simplified it. The room went still around that sentence. The refrigerator hummed. Rain whispered against the glass. I set the water bottle on the counter. "You simplified me." Madison looked tired now, but not ashamed. "You are making this bigger than it is. Your father told me a man should contribute. He is old-fashioned. Your brother called me a freeloader. Trevor jokes about everyone. Your mother praised you for carrying me." Madison pressed her lips together. "What did you want me to do? Pull out bank statements over dinner?" "No. I wanted you not to create the story in the first place." Her face cooled. Maybe if you acted more successful, people would see you differently. The words landed softly. That made them worse. I looked around the kitchen she had redesigned twice, at the marble counters, the custom cabinets, the pendant lights imported from Italy. She had chosen every detail. I had paid every invoice. What does successful look like to you? I asked. Not driving an old truck when you can afford better. Not wearing the same watch for 10 years. Not hiding in a home office. People notice things. You notice things. Everyone does. My phone buzzed again. A message from Daniel appeared on the screen. I can have the full household ledger ready by Monday. There is something else we should discuss. Call me in the morning. I read it twice. Daniel did not use phrases like something else unless the numbers had already started telling a story. Madison picked up her purse and headed toward the stairs. I have an early meeting, she said. Can we stop turning one joke into a crisis? I watched her climb the first few steps. Madison. She stopped but did not turn around. Did you ever tell your family the house was yours? The silence answered before she did. They assume it is, she said. I never corrected them. Then she continued upstairs, leaving me alone beneath the kitchen lights. I stood beside the card she had left on the counter and thought about all the things I had never corrected. The old truck, the quiet office, the modest clothes, the idea that privacy meant failure. For years, I had believed there was dignity in not announcing every sacrifice. That night, I began to understand the cost of letting someone else narrate your life. At 7 the next morning, Daniel called before I could reach him. His voice was careful. Ethan, I started pulling the household records. I stepped into my office and closed the door. What did you find? Papers shifted on his end of the line. Madison has been requesting copies of documents she has never asked for before. I looked toward the staircase, where I could hear her moving through the bedroom. What kind of documents? Daniel paused. The deed to the house. The company valuation. Your personal account statements. The rain had stopped outside, but the room suddenly felt colder. When? I asked. Over the last 6 weeks. I sat down slowly behind my desk. Daniel lowered his voice. Ethan, I do not think this is only about what she told her family. Daniel's warning stayed with me after the call ended, not because of what he said, but because of how carefully he said it. He had handled my books through recessions, tenant lawsuits, failed inspections, and one refinancing deal that nearly collapsed 48 hours before closing. Daniel Brooks did not dramatize numbers. He let them speak. That morning, they were saying Madison had been preparing for something. I sat behind my desk while the house woke around me. Pipes shifted in the walls. The coffee maker clicked downstairs. A cabinet door closed harder than necessary. Ordinary sounds. Married sounds. The kind that make a life feel permanent even when something underneath it has already started moving. Through the office window, sunlight spread across the wet lawn, turning every drop of rain into a point of light. Madison appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later wearing a cream blouse, tailored pants, and the expression of someone already late for a meeting. Who were you talking to? She asked. Daniel. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. It was small. Most people would have missed it. I did not. This early. He starts early. About what? I turned my chair slightly toward her. Quarterly records. She nodded too quickly. Right? Of course. Then she stepped inside and looked at the papers on my desk, though there was nothing there except a legal pad and yesterday's mail. Are you going into the city today? She asked. I work here. You know what I mean. I did. She wanted to know whether the house would be empty. I have meetings, I said. From here. Her smile arrived half a second late. I will see you tonight. She leaned down, kissed my cheek, and left behind the faint scent of expensive perfume and the colder feeling of being studied. I listened until the garage door closed. Then I opened the calendar on our shared tablet. Madison had blocked off dinner 2 nights later with the words family house discussion. No restaurant. No client name. Just our address. I stared at the entry until the screen dimmed. She had not mentioned inviting anyone. She had not asked whether I was available. The meeting had been placed inside my home as if I were another item on the schedule. At 9, I drove to Daniel's office in South Park. The building was quiet, all smoked glass and polished stone, but his suite looked the same as it had 15 years earlier. Darkwood shelves, framed tax certificates, a brass clock that ticked louder whenever nobody spoke. Daniel stood when I entered. He was 51, broad-shouldered, silver beginning to show at his temples, with the steady manner of a man who trusted documents more than memory. He closed the door behind me. "Coffee?" he asked. "No." He nodded once and placed a thick gray folder on the conference table. My name was printed on the label. Beneath it, in smaller letters, "Household expenditures." "I have not finished," he said, "but I have enough to show you the pattern." He opened the folder. The first page was a 10-year summary. Mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities, insurance, vehicle purchases, tuition, vacations, credit cards, home renovations. The columns ran down the page with mechanical precision. My accounts appeared again and again. Madison's appeared mostly in transfers to savings. "How much?" I asked. Daniel adjusted his glasses. "Through the end of last month, you paid 93% of documented household expenses." The number should have shocked me. Instead, it felt familiar, like hearing the exact temperature of a room I already knew was cold. And her income? Most of it went into accounts held individually in her name. Legally, yes. You agreed to separate retirement and personal savings years ago. He turned another page. The issue is not that she saved money. The issue is the story she appears to be constructing around it. Daniel slid copies of 3 email requests across the table. Each one had been sent from Madison's personal address to administrative staff at Cole Property Holdings. She had asked for the most recent company valuation, copies of my compensation history, and confirmation of ownership interests in every commercial property. She wrote that the documents were needed for family financial planning. No one had sent them because company policy required my approval. Why did nobody tell me? I asked. Your office manager assumed Madison had discussed it with you. She forwarded the request to me yesterday after I began pulling the household records. I read the emails again. The language was polite, professional, almost harmless. That was what made it unsettling. Madison had not searched drawers in the middle of the night. She had approached my company like someone gathering evidence she believed she was entitled to receive. There is more, Daniel said. He placed a printed property record beside the emails. Someone requested a certified copy of the deed to your house 6 weeks ago. Can we prove it was her? The request used her full name and home address. I leaned back. The brass clock counted 3 seconds before I spoke. She knows I bought the house before we met. Yes. She knows it has never been marital property. Yes. Then why request the deed? Daniel folded his hands. That is a question for an attorney, not an accountant. But I can tell you this. People rarely gather valuations, compensation records, and property documents because they are curious. He let the words settle between us. I looked through the window at traffic moving along the boulevard below. Cars changed lanes. Brake lights flashed. Everyone appeared to know where they were going. Did she contact you directly? I asked. Daniel hesitated. Last month. I turned back to him. About what? He removed one final sheet from the folder. It was a record of a telephone call, dated 5 weeks earlier. She asked how household expenses were categorized. She wanted to know whether company-paid charges could be presented as business benefits instead of personal contributions. My hands stayed flat on the table. What did you tell her? That accounting classifications do not change who funded the expense. And then, she asked whether someone without a traditional paycheck could be considered financially dependent on a spouse. The room became very quiet. Daniel watched me with the professional concern of a man trying not to make a personal conclusion from financial evidence. He did not need to. The shape of it was already clear. Madison had not only been telling her family I depended on her. She had been searching for a way to make the claim survive contact with paper. My phone lit up on the table. A message from Madison appeared. My parents and Trevor are coming over Thursday. Dad wants to discuss the kitchen renovation and some paperwork. Please do not make it weird. Daniel read nothing, but my face must have changed because he asked, "What is it?" I turned the phone toward him. He looked at the message, then at the folder. "What paperwork?" he asked. "She has not told me." Daniel closed the file slowly. "Then do not sign anything." I slipped the phone back into my pocket. I was not planning to. Ethan, I mean it. Not a renovation estimate. Not a financing form. Not a change to the deed. Nothing. I stood and looked down at 10 years of payments arranged in perfect rows. Every number represented something I had once given without keeping score. A roof. A degree. A car. A vacation. A chance for Madison to build a career without worrying whether the lights would stay on. I had never considered generosity a contract. She had apparently considered it evidence that could be relabeled. Finish the ledger, I said. Daniel nodded. How far back? I picked up the gray folder. All the way back. He studied me for a moment. What are you going to do? I thought about the dinner, the laughter, and Madison signing my name out of our history without ever touching a pen. Nothing yet, I said. I want to hear the version she plans to tell when she thinks I have no records. For the next 2 days, I said nothing. That was harder than anger would have been. Anger gives you somewhere to put the pain. Silence makes you carry it from room to room. I carried mine through breakfast, through emails, through 2 property calls, and a meeting about a medical office lease in Huntersville. Madison moved around me as if Thursday evening were ordinary. She asked whether we needed more coffee. She reminded me to take the recycling bin to the curb. She stood in my office doorway Wednesday afternoon and asked if I could be presentable when her family arrived. My father wants this conversation to stay practical, she said. I looked up from my laptop. Practical about what? The kitchen, the house, long-term planning. That sounds broad. It does not have to be. She smiled, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Just try not to take everything personally. Then she walked away before I could answer. I watched the doorway for a long time after she disappeared. 12 years earlier, Madison had walked through that same doorway carrying 2 paper cups of coffee and a stack of graduate school brochures. Back then, she was 26, working as a junior marketing coordinator for a regional furniture company and earning $43,000 a year. She had ambition, but ambition was expensive. Her student loans were already over $68,000. Her car needed a new transmission. Her apartment lease was ending. She sat on the floor beside my desk, spread the brochures across the rug, and told me she wanted a master's degree in business administration but could not justify taking on more debt. Maybe later, she said, when life is more settled. I remember closing the spreadsheet on my screen. Apply now. She laughed because she thought I was being encouraging. Then I told her I would cover the tuition. The laughter stopped. Ethan, that is almost $90,000. I know. I cannot let you do that. You are not letting me. We are building something together. She cried that night. Not loudly. Madison never liked appearing overwhelmed. She pressed both hands around the coffee cup and promised she would never forget what I was giving her. At the time, I believed her. I did not pay the tuition because I wanted gratitude. I paid it because I loved the woman she was becoming. While she attended evening classes, I handled dinner, laundry, and the house. When her old sedan finally failed, I bought her a reliable replacement so she could commute safely. When she finished the program, I hosted the graduation party in our backyard and listened as Robert told everyone how proud he was that his daughter had accomplished everything on her own. Madison looked at me across the crowd. For 1 second, I expected her to correct him. She did not. I told myself it did not matter. Marriage was not an award ceremony. We knew the truth. That should have been enough. A year later, she applied for a senior position at Halston Creative Group. She had the degree but not the client experience. I knew 2 developers who needed a marketing firm for mixed-use projects. I made introductions. Halston won both accounts. Madison was promoted 6 months later. She worked hard. I never denied that. She learned quickly, stayed late, and knew how to make executives feel understood. But the first door had opened because I knocked on it. Over time, that detail disappeared from the story. First, she said the clients had found her team through industry connections. Then she said she had brought them in herself. By the 3rd year, she spoke as if I had no idea what her work involved. Every revision was small. Harmless, I told myself. People polish their histories. They simplify complicated help into cleaner success. Then the revisions reached our home. She started telling friends she had chosen the house because I was too distracted to care. She called the vacations her gifts to us, even when the reservations were charged to my company travel account after property conferences. At a neighborhood cookout, I heard her tell someone she had paid off her student loans through discipline. I stood 10 feet away holding a plate of barbecue and said nothing. That silence returned to me on Thursday afternoon as I opened an old storage cabinet in my office. Inside were closing documents, tuition receipts, vehicle titles, and photographs from the years when Madison still looked at me like a partner. One picture showed us in the empty kitchen before the first renovation. She was wearing paint-spattered jeans, holding a cabinet sample against the wall. On the back, in her handwriting, were 6 words. Everything we build together. I read the sentence twice. Then I placed the photograph inside Daniel's gray folder. At 5:30, Madison came home early. She changed into a dark green dress and arranged the dining table with the precision of a corporate presentation. Water glasses, cloth napkins, a bottle of wine Robert liked. In the center, beside a vase of white flowers, she placed a blue document envelope. "What is that?" I asked. She adjusted one of the forks. "Paperwork. You said that already. Then you already have your answer." At 6:15, Robert and Linda arrived. Trevor followed 10 minutes later carrying a bakery box and the confidence of a man who believed he had been invited to watch someone else lose an argument. Madison greeted them warmly. I shook hands, poured drinks, and listened as they discussed cabinet finishes and property values. Nobody asked what I wanted. By 7, dinner. Plates had been cleared, and the blue envelope remained untouched between us. Robert finally placed both palms on the table. "Ethan, Madison has carried a lot of responsibility here," he said. "This renovation raised some questions about protecting her investment." Madison looked down, playing reluctant. Linda reached across and touched her hand. Trevor leaned back in his chair. I let the moment unfold exactly as they had planned it. "What investment?" I asked. Robert glanced at Madison, then slid the envelope toward me. "The house." I opened it slowly. Inside was a post-nuptial agreement and a property acknowledgement form. The language stated that Madison's financial contributions had preserved and improved the home, giving her a controlling, equitable interest. At the bottom was a blank line for my signature. A black pen rested beside it. "This is only fair," Madison said softly. "After everything I have paid for." I looked at her, then at the document, then at the family gathered around my table. They were not there to discuss cabinets. They were there to witness me confirm a lie. I placed the papers back inside the envelope. "I have one question," I said. Robert frowned. "What question?" I rested my hand beside the pen. "Why are all of you so certain Madison paid for this house?" For a moment, nobody answered. The dining room seemed to shrink around the question. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. A car passed outside, tires whispering over damp pavement. Robert looked at Madison as if the answer belonged to her. Madison looked at me as if I had broken an agreement by asking. "Because I have," she said. Her voice was calm, but I heard the strain beneath it. "I have paid for renovations, furniture, repairs, taxes, everything that keeps this place running." I kept my eyes on her. "Everything." Trevor shifted in his chair. "Come on, Ethan. This does not need to turn into a courtroom." "Then why did everyone bring paperwork?" His mouth closed. Linda touched the edge of her napkin. Robert leaned forward. "The point is that Madison has invested years of her income into this home. No one is accusing you of anything." I looked down at the post-nuptial agreement. "This document says I contributed little or nothing." Robert cleared his throat. "That is legal language. It is also a statement of fact." Madison reached for the blue envelope, but I placed my hand over it first. Not forcefully, just enough to stop the motion. Her eyes met mine. "You are embarrassing me," she whispered. "No," I said. "I am asking where the story came from." Linda exhaled sharply. "Madison has told us how difficult things have been. She never complained, but we could see the pressure." "What pressure?" "Carrying the household," she said. The answer came too quickly. She had repeated it before, maybe many times. I turned to Robert. "How long have you believed that?" He glanced at his daughter. "A few years." 5, Madison said. Everyone looked at her. She corrected herself immediately. "Approximately 5 years." The number settled inside me with more weight than the agreement. This was not a careless remark at dinner. It was a campaign with a timeline. 5 years of private conversations. 5 years of letting every family gathering place another layer of contempt over my name. I remembered birthdays where Trevor had joked about my flexible schedule. Christmas mornings when Robert asked whether I planned to get serious about work. Sunday cookouts when Linda praised Madison for being strong. I had mistaken their comments for ignorance. Now I understood they had been briefed. "What exactly did you tell them?" I asked. Madison pushed back from the table. "I am not doing this. You asked me to sign away rights in my own home. We are already doing this." Robert raised one hand. "Ethan, lower the temperature." My voice is not raised. That made the room quieter. Madison stood and walked toward the kitchen counter. She poured herself water, though her glass at the table was still full. "I told them the truth as I experienced it," she said. "You do not bring home a paycheck. Your company pays for things in ways nobody can follow. I manage the visible expenses. I manage the household image. I handle the life people actually see. And because they do not see my work, you told them it did not exist. I told them I was the stable one. Trevor gave a small nod, like the sentence confirmed something he had always suspected. I looked at him. Do you know who paid off Madison's student loans? His expression changed. Madison turned from the counter. That is irrelevant. Do you know who bought her first car after graduate school? Ethan. Her voice sharpened. Stop. Do you know who paid for the first kitchen renovation? Robert stared at the table. Linda looked at Madison. The certainty in the room had begun to loosen. I did not enjoy it. That surprised me. For 2 days, I had imagined the satisfaction of watching the lie collapse. Instead, I felt tired. Every fact I could produce was attached to a memory I had once considered private and generous. Turning those memories into evidence felt like placing price tags on love. Madison returned to the table. You helped, she said. I have never denied that. You told your family I lived off you. Because emotionally, that is how it felt. The sentence hung there, slippery and impossible to measure. Daniel had warned me that people changed definitions when the numbers stopped cooperating. Apparently, we had reached that stage. Emotionally, I repeated. Yes, I carried the responsibility. I had the career people understood. I made us look successful. You made us look successful. Do not twist my words. I am repeating them. Robert rubbed one hand across his jaw. Maybe we should all take a step back. No, Madison said. She returned to her chair and pushed the pen toward me. We came here to settle something practical. The house has increased in value because of improvements I supervised. I need security. Sign the acknowledgement, and we can stop turning this into a public accounting exercise. I looked at the pen, then at the family waiting for me to surrender because resistance would look petty. How much do you think the house is worth? I asked. Robert answered before Madison could. At least $1.4 million. And how much do you believe Madison contributed? Enough to deserve protection. That is not a number. Trevor leaned forward. Why does every question have to become a trap with you? Because every answer tonight has been built on a lie. Madison's face went still. Be careful. I have been careful for 12 years. I reached into the gray folder beside my chair and removed a single page. Not the full ledger. Not yet. Just the original closing statement from before Madison and I had met. I slid it across the table toward Robert. Read the purchase date. He adjusted his glasses. The room waited. May 17th, he said. Then his eyes moved to the year. He stopped. Linda leaned toward him. What is it? Robert looked up at me. This was purchased 3 years before the marriage. Yes. Madison folded her arms. That does not erase what I put into it. Then let us calculate what you put into it. She stared at me. You really want to humiliate me in front of my family? I want the truth in front of the same people who heard the lie. My phone vibrated on the table. I glanced at the screen. Daniel had sent a message. Full ledger complete. Supporting statements organized. I can come tonight if needed. I read it once, then locked the phone. Madison saw the name before the screen went dark. Her face changed. Not much. Just enough. Why is Daniel messaging you? She asked. I closed the gray folder. Because he knows who paid every bill. Madison looked at the dark phone screen as if Daniel's name had changed the temperature in the room. You called your accountant about our marriage? She asked. I called my accountant about my accounts. That is not what this is. Then tell me what it is. She opened her mouth, but Robert spoke first. Maybe Daniel can clear this up. Madison turned toward him. Dad, this is private. Trevor gave a short laugh. It stopped being private when legal paperwork came out. Linda looked between them, uncertainty replacing the confidence she had carried into my dining room. I unlocked my phone and typed a single message. Come over. Bring everything. Daniel responded before I set the phone down. 20 minutes. Madison stood so quickly her chair moved against the hardwood. No, absolutely not. Her voice was still controlled, but the polish had cracked. You do not get to invite a stranger into a family discussion. Daniel has managed my finances. For 15 years. Exactly. Your finances. He will be biased. Bank statements are not biased. She pressed both hands against the edge of the table. You are turning this into a spectacle. I looked at the blue envelope, the pen, and the 3 relatives who had arrived expecting me to sign. You brought an audience. No one spoke after that. The waiting became its own kind of pressure. Robert read the closing statement again. Linda asked Madison in a low voice whether she had known the purchase date. Madison said the date did not matter because the home had become part of our marriage. Trevor stopped making jokes. I sat with the gray folder in front of me and listened to the clock above the kitchen doorway mark each minute. Madison moved into the living room and made 2 telephone calls with her voice lowered. I could not hear every word, only fragments. Misunderstanding. Unnecessary. He is overreacting. The same words people use when a story begins slipping out of their control. At 7:43, the doorbell rang. Madison stopped speaking in the middle of a sentence. I opened the door. Daniel stood beneath the porch light in a charcoal overcoat, holding 2 document boxes. Beside him was a woman in a navy suit carrying a leather portfolio. Madison's face went pale when she saw her. "Rachel," she said. Rachel Bennett stepped inside and closed her umbrella. "Good evening, Madison." I had known Rachel for 9 years. She handled property acquisitions, business contracts, and the legal structures around Cole Property Holdings. Madison had met her at holiday parties and charity events. She knew Rachel did not attend casual dinners. "Why is your attorney here?" Madison asked. Rachel looked at me before answering. Daniel found documents that required legal context. Robert rose from his chair. "What kind of documents?" "We will get there," I said. Daniel carried the boxes into the dining room and placed them beside the blue envelope. The sound was soft, but everyone watched as if something heavy had landed. He removed his coat, sat across from Madison, and opened the first box. Inside were labeled folders arranged by year. 12 years of payments. 12 years of records. 12 years of truth waiting in paper form. Daniel adjusted his glasses. "Before we begin, I want to be clear. I am not here to discuss feelings, intentions, or assumptions. I am here to identify the source of funds used for documented household expenses." Madison crossed her arms. "That sounds convenient." Daniel nodded. "It is accounting. Convenience is not part of the method." Trevor looked down to hide a smile. Madison saw it. Her jaw tightened. Daniel began with the smallest charge, the dinner from 2 nights earlier. He placed the receipt on the table, followed by the credit account statement and the payment record. The card used by Madison was an authorized user card connected to an account opened by Ethan Cole, he said. The full amount of $1,846.72 was paid from the operating account of Cole Property Holdings. Robert stared at the receipt. Linda looked at Madison. "You said you paid," she whispered. Madison lifted her chin. "I signed the check." Daniel did not react. Signing a receipt is not the same as funding a payment. He moved to the next folder. Her vehicle, purchase price, insurance, registration, maintenance. Every amount traced back to my accounts. Then the graduate school tuition, $88,400, paid in 6 installments. Then the student loan balance, $67,912, paid in full 4 months after our wedding. Linda's hand slowly covered her mouth. Madison leaned forward. "Those were gifts." "Yes," Daniel said. "They were gifts from Ethan." The distinction sat in the room like a line no one could cross. He continued. "The first kitchen renovation. The second kitchen renovation. Property taxes. Homeowner's insurance. Utilities. Vacations. Medical expenses. Furniture. Landscaping." The numbers did not arrive as one dramatic total. They came one by one, each tied to a date, an account, and a name. "Mine." Robert stopped interrupting. Trevor's posture changed. Linda looked smaller in her chair. Madison's expression remained composed, but one hand had closed around the stem of her water glass. Daniel reached the mortgage file and opened it. The property was purchased by Ethan 3 years before the marriage. The original down payment was $280,000. Mortgage payments from the date of marriage through the present were made entirely from Ethan's personal investment account and later from Cole Property Holdings distributions. He slid the amortization history toward Robert. Madison made no documented mortgage payments. Robert read the first page, then the second. His voice was quiet. "Not one. Not one." Madison looked at me. "You never asked me to. You told them you had." She looked away. Daniel closed the mortgage folder and opened another. "There is one additional issue." Rachel placed her leather portfolio on the table. Madison's eyes followed it. Daniel continued. Over the same 12-year period, Madison's employment income was deposited primarily into individual savings and investment accounts held in her name. Linda frowned. How much? Madison answered before Daniel could. That is nobody's business. Rachel spoke for the first time. It became relevant when this agreement claimed Madison's income preserved and improved the property. She opened the blue envelope, removed the post-nuptial agreement, and placed it beside Daniel's ledger. That claim is unsupported by the financial record. Madison's voice dropped. I did not write the legal language. Rachel met her eyes. But you provided the facts behind it. The room went still again. Daniel reached into the second box and removed a thin red folder. It was the only folder not labeled by year. He placed it in the center of the table, but did not open it. This contains the requests for company valuations, ownership records, and compensation history. Robert looked at Madison. Why were you asking for those? She said nothing. Rachel rested one hand on the red folder. That is the question we need answered before anyone signs anything tonight. Madison stared at the red folder as if it had appeared from nowhere, but I knew better. Every page inside it had begun with her name. I was trying to understand our finances, she said. Rachel did not move her hand. Then why did you request the records without Ethan's knowledge? Because he never explains anything. You did not ask him. I should not have to ask permission to understand my own marriage. Her voice was gaining strength again, building a new version as the old one collapsed. Robert looked at her carefully. Did you plan to leave him? Madison turned toward her father. No, the answer came too fast. Daniel opened the red folder and removed the first email. On September 2nd, you requested the current valuation of Cole Property Holdings. He placed another page beside it. On September 9th, you requested a list of all commercial properties in which Ethan held a controlling interest. A third page followed. On September 21st, you asked whether his company distributions could be characterized as a regular income. Madison looked at me. You had no right to collect my private communications. You sent them to my employees, I said. They became company records. Rachel removed a printed note from her portfolio. There was also a consultation request made to a family law office downtown. Linda's face changed. A divorce attorney? I only asked questions, Madison said. People are allowed to ask questions. Robert leaned back slowly. What kind of questions? Madison did not answer him. She looked at Rachel instead. You cannot prove what I intended. Intent is not the first issue, Rachel said. Accuracy is. She placed the post-nuptial agreement next to the financial ledger. This document claims you were the primary source of household support and that your income materially increased the value of Ethan's separate property. The records show the opposite. Madison's eyes moved toward the agreement. That wording came from the attorney. Based on information you provided, I described how the marriage felt. Daniel closed one of the folders. Bank records do not measure feelings. Trevor shifted in his seat and looked at Madison with an expression I had never seen from him before. Not mockery. Doubt. You told us he had not worked in years, he said. I said he did not have a normal job. You said he depended on you. He depends on me in other ways. That is not what you said. The room tightened around them. For years, Trevor had been the easiest person for Madison to persuade because he enjoyed the joke. Now he was realizing he had been used as part of it. Linda looked at the documents spread across the table. Why would you tell us you paid the mortgage? Madison rubbed her forehead. Because every time something happened in this house, I handled it. You chose paint colors, I said. You scheduled contractors. I paid them. She turned on me. You think writing checks means you carried the marriage? No. I think writing checks means I paid the bills you said you paid. Her mouth closed. I had not raised my voice. I did not need to. The numbers had already done the difficult part. Robert picked up the tuition summary. $88,000, he said quietly. You told me your employer covered graduate school. Madison looked down. They reimbursed part of one semester. You let me believe they paid all of it. I did not correct you. The same phrase she had used about the house. I watched Robert understand what I had understood 2 nights earlier. Madison rarely created a lie in one sentence. She built it by leaving the truth unattended. Daniel opened another folder. There is a larger issue related to Madison's career. Her head lifted. That has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with the claim that you built your professional success without financial or business support from Ethan. He placed 3 contracts on the table. Halston Creative Group appeared at the top of each page. Beneath it were the names of companies I recognized immediately. Stone Ridge Development, Carver Medical Partners, Northline Commercial. Robert looked at me. What are these? Clients, I said. Daniel continued. All three were introduced to Halston through Ethan's professional network. Together, they generated more than $4 million in billings over 7 years. Madison's face lost color. Trevor looked from the contracts to her. Were those the accounts that got you promoted? She did not answer. Daniel did. According to Halston's public announcements, yes. Linda whispered Madison's name, but Madison held up one hand. I managed those accounts. I earned those promotions. You did, I said. Nobody is taking away your work. That is exactly what this is. No, this is correcting the part where you erased mine. She pushed her chair back and stood near the window. Outside, the yard lights glowed against the wet grass. For a moment, her reflection looked trapped between the glass and the darkness. You want everyone to think I am nothing without you, she said. I want them to know I was never nothing because of you. The word stopped her. She turned slowly. I continued. I paid because I believed we were building together. I opened doors because I believed your success was our success. I stayed quiet because I thought love did not need an audience. You turned that silence into proof that I had no value. Robert lowered the tuition pages. Madison, did you plan to use this agreement in a divorce? She looked at him, then at Rachel, then at me. Her expression shifted through anger, fear, and calculation before settling on something flatter. I wanted security. Rachel opened her portfolio again. Security from what? Madison's eyes stayed on mine. From waking up one day and finding out everything belonged to Ethan. I looked around the house she had called hers, at the documents claiming my work was hers, at the family she had trained to see me as dependent. So you decided to make sure everyone believed nothing belonged to me. She did not answer. Rachel removed one final document and placed it beside the red folder. It was a printed email sent from Madison to the family law office 3 weeks earlier. At the top was a subject line. Establishing financial dependency before separation. Robert read it first. His face changed completely. Then Madison said the sentence that finally ended every excuse. I never thought any of you would see that. The sentence did not sound like a confession. It sounded like surprise, as if Madison believed the real mistake was not what she had written, but that the rest of us had been allowed to read it. Robert kept his eyes on the email. Linda stared at her daughter with both hands folded tightly in her lap. Trevor looked down at the table, where the evidence had become too organized to dismiss as a misunderstanding. Rachel broke the silence. The message continues, she said. Madison turned toward her. Do not read it. Rachel's expression did not change. Ethan is entitled to know what was being prepared about him. She looked at me. I nodded once. Rachel read only the relevant lines. Madison had asked how long a spouse needed to appear financially dependent before that pattern could influence negotiations. She had described me as underemployed, socially withdrawn, and reliant on her professional income. She had asked whether statements from close family members could support that description. Each sentence explained another piece of the last 5 years. Robert's lectures, Linda's sympathy, Trevor's jokes. They had not merely believed a false story. Without knowing it, they had become witnesses for it. Robert placed the email on the table as though it no longer belonged in his hands. You were using us, he said. Madison shook her head. I was protecting myself. By having us repeat things that were not true, I never told anyone to lie. You told us your version, Trevor said. Then you let us say it for you. Madison looked toward me, searching for the softer person I had been before dinner. Ethan, I was scared. Of what? Of having no leverage. The word changed something in me. Leverage. Not safety. Not partnership. Not fairness. Leverage. I looked at the dining room we had used for birthdays, holidays, and quiet Sunday dinners. I remembered Madison choosing the table because she said it was large enough for the family we would build around it. Now it was covered with contracts, statements, and a plan designed to turn our history into a negotiation advantage. You had 100% of your salary available to you, I said. You had savings in your name, retirement accounts in your name, a career I supported. What did you think you lacked? Her eyes filled, but her voice remained guarded. Ownership. Daniel opened the final financial summary. As of last month, Madison's individual liquid and investment accounts totaled approximately $640,000. Linda inhaled sharply. Robert looked at his daughter. You had that much saved? It is my money. Nobody said it was not, I replied. But while you saved it, You told everyone you were using it to support me. Madison pressed her palms to the table. I worked for every dollar. So did I. Daniel turned the summary toward the family. During the same period, Ethan paid $1,382,000 in household and personal expenses attributable to both spouses. That figure excludes the original purchase of the home and most business-related benefits. Trevor stared at the total. More than $1 million? Daniel nodded. Documented. Madison looked at the rows of figures and then at me. You kept score. No. Daniel kept records. There is a difference. Rachel gathered the unsigned agreement and placed it back inside the blue envelope. This document will not be executed tonight. Madison's head turned sharply. That is not your decision. It is Ethan's decision, and he has declined to sign. I slid the black pen away from me. The small movement made the answer final. Robert stood slowly. He looked older than he had when he arrived. I owe you an apology, he said to me. Madison rose as well. Dad, do not. He did not look at her. I judged you without asking a single honest question. Linda's eyes were wet. So did I. Trevor rubbed one hand across the back of his neck. I made jokes because I thought she was carrying everything. You believed your sister, I said. That part is understandable. Madison stared at me. You are forgiving them? They were wrong about me. You made sure they were. Her face tightened. So I am the villain now. This is not about assigning a role. It is about ending a lie. I turned to Daniel. Tomorrow morning, remove every authorized user card connected to my personal and business accounts. Madison went still. You cannot do that. I can and I will. What about the household? Shared obligations will continue through a documented joint account. Your personal expenses will be yours. Mine will be mine. She looked around the room as if someone might object on her behalf. No one did. I continued. The vehicle payment, personal shopping, professional memberships, private travel, and anything else presented as your independence will now be paid from your income. You are punishing me. I am giving you the financial reality you told everyone already existed. The words landed harder than anger because they left no place to argue. Rachel placed another paper in front of me. It authorized a formal separation of discretionary accounts while preserving required household payments. I signed it. One signature. No raised voice. No performance. Just a boundary where silence had been before. Madison watched the pen move across the page. You planned this, she said. No. I prepared after I learned you had planned something else. Robert picked up his coat. Linda followed, avoiding Madison's eyes. Trevor paused near the doorway. I am sorry, Ethan, he said. Then he looked at his sister. You should have told us the truth. When the front door closed behind them, the house became painfully quiet. Daniel packed the folders. Rachel secured the documents. Madison remained at the table, surrounded by the remains of the story she had built. Before leaving, Daniel placed one final statement in front of her. It showed the balance on the card she had used at the retirement dinner. The amount had already been paid. She looked at the zero beneath the total. What is this supposed to prove? She asked. I stood beneath the kitchen lights and met her eyes. Nothing new, I said. Only who was paying while you were telling everyone I was not.